Sensitivity Rant. Hey guys, Culture here. It's gonna be a crash-free episode, so no dick jokes, gay jokes, or just plain offensive jokes at all. But I mean, those kinds of jokes are funny, right? It's hard to know anymore where the line is between what's offensive and what's alright to say. Instead of alright to say, I was going to use the term politically correct, but even that term is a little bit dumb. It implies that we hold people in the public eye to a different standard than our own. But why should we? We're all people, we all live in societies with other people, and therefore we should all live by the same standards about what is right and what is wrong. And nowhere is that more true than on the internet. The internet is an instant straw poll of opinions on what's okay to say and when it's okay to say it. I'll warn you now, you may find some things in this video offensive, so please keep an open mind and know that in order to discuss sensitivity, we first have to create a safe space where things that are typically considered wrong to say may be said. Cue the trigger warning montage. Now that that's over with, take these two jokes. What goes down well with ice? The Titanic. Who are the fastest readers in the world? New Yorkers. Some of them go through 110 stories in 5 seconds. Okay, now most of you, not all of you, would have thought, a Titanic joke? Hilarious. But a 9/11 joke? Okay, now you're pushing it. So why is one incident okay to make fun of and the other considered taboo? Well, some people say that time plus tragedy equals comedy, the implication being that given enough separation from the incident, one can make fun of it. So does that separation work in other respects? For example, can actual physical distance from a tragedy make it more socially acceptable to make a joke? Take for example the tsunamis in Japan. Now, I can't speak for everyone, but I know for sure that I saw jokes pop up immediately. The tsunamis also hit Indonesia, prompting jokes like, what's the main sport in Indonesia? Body surfing. Now, just because the disaster didn't directly affect most people in the Western world, it appeared that the tragedy became less significant than, say, 9/11. And of course, that's not true for every person in the Western world, but the impression that I got was that this tragedy was more acceptable to make a joke about. Now, I'm not going to commit career suicide and voice my personal opinion on which jokes are okay to say, but wait, I just mentioned suicide. Now I have to spend a whole 5 minutes wondering if that's okay to say, and I'm constantly checking and rechecking myself to make sure I haven't said anything offensive. And of course, I'm not some smartass who makes jokes about a tragedy and doesn't realize that it might offend people. But let's say I make an offhand comment, like, that joke was so bad it gave me cancer. Now, inevitably, there are going to be some people who have had cancer or who have had friends and family who have had cancer, and I'll say right now, that shit sucks. But I feel at a certain point the intention behind what I said has to be taken into account. Obviously, I didn't intend to make light of cancer, but it was just a comparison I made in the moment. But maybe that's the point. Maybe it's not about what I intended, but what I did. In law, you can be accused of negligence, which is essentially a failure to exercise reasonable care. It doesn't matter if it was an accident or if you didn't know any better. You can be found guilty of a crime no matter what your intention was. Of course, the charge would change from, say, manslaughter to murder. And maybe jokes are the same. Maybe it's not about what you meant to say or how you said it, but instead it's about a failure to realize that not everyone thinks the same way as you, that not everyone will be okay with what you said, and that negligence can be costly. And here's where I'm going to take my stand. Not on the specifics of what's okay to say, but instead to view it more broadly and say that people need to stop being so sensitive. And I hate making grand sweeping statements like that because I know not everyone feels that way about jokes, but I'm sure everyone has had that one kind of joke that does annoy them. Maybe it's sexist jokes, or gay jokes, or racial jokes, or diabetes jokes, or mentally retarded jokes, or whatever it may be, but the point is, everyone has at least that one type of joke that when they hear it, they might feel a bit off-put, or resentful, or mad. Some jokes make people downright violent. And before I get too much further, I feel the constant need to defend myself. Yes, I'm white. Yes, I'm male. Yes, I'm heterosexual. Yes, I'm cisgendered. No, I don't have any ongoing diseases or disorders. And yes, I was incredibly lucky to be born into a family who is able to financially support themselves and myself. All of these seem to make me safe from the butt of most stereotypical jokes. So you might say, why do you get to decide what's alright to say and what's not? Why do you get to talk about something that you can't possibly have a proper understanding of? Or put more concisely, what gives you the right? It's not a bad point. I mean, my perspective is obviously biased. But here's the dirty little secret that no one wants you to know. Everyone is biased. We're emotional beings. That's how we make most of our decisions, at least the subconscious ones. But in some fleeting moments, we're able to put aside our preconceptions of the world and to think logically, to see it from someone else's point of view, to put ourselves in their shoes. And that's what I want to do here. Not to say that I'm right, but to offer suggestions. and you'll take those suggestions, and you'll filter them through your own ideas and reach your own conclusions. That's fine. All I'm asking is for you to be open-minded and hear me out. Now, with that preamble out of the way, let's jump into some good reasons to be offended. Let's say a public figure makes a comment like, "Women are less valuable to society than men." Okay, this person is obviously a douchebag, right? Well, 99% of the time I'm going to say yes, this person should be socially ostracized for saying and believing this because it's false and sets us back as a species. And this is where the advantage of taking offense comes into play. It allows us to evaluate whether the person in question is reliable and worthy of respect or worthy of having a place in society. In other words, if the majority is offended, then by reactive voting we can squash that person's career, and possibly even their personal life if they're harassed enough. It's just like I discussed in our How Do Humans Become Awkward video. Judgment of one another is one way in which humans improved via natural selection, or, in this case, social selection. So yes, sometimes we are right to stand up for our beliefs and speak out against people who make comments such as the one above. But culture, you say. You said 99% of the time. What about that other 1%? Well, I'm not sure it's 1% exactly, but the point is that there are exceptions, and one of the most common exceptions I can think of is comedy, specifically satire. Let's say that the person who said this comment, "Women are less valuable to society than men," was a comedian on a late show doing an impression of a political figure. And that doesn't mean that the political figure has that opinion either, since the comedian may be exaggerating for comedic purposes. You know, to make people laugh. Like that thing everyone enjoys doing? Or used to at least. I mean, God, I don't know anymore. My point is that in this case, it'd be pretty obvious that the comedian was joking, and that those weren't his real beliefs. But now let's say that instead, a comedian makes a comment like that in a stand-up act. It's slightly less gimmicky, slightly less obvious, but probably still defendable. Now, what if they made a joke which implied what that comment says, such as, "I'm not sexist because I realize that being sexist is wrong, and being wrong is for women." Now I'm going to explain something which I would have thought people could figure out for themselves, but apparently most people can't. Just as in the first two examples, in this case the comedian also does not believe in what they're saying. The joke works because there are people in society who do actually think like that, or at least used to think like that, and hence we have a frame of reference for the joke. In fact, if anything, the joke actually makes fun of people who have sexist views, because it points out how dumb those views are. It becomes even harder to determine if someone is joking or not when reading a joke over the internet. For example, comedians on Twitter or fake news sites such as The Onion. But here's a good rule of thumb for determining if someone is serious or not. Look at their actions. It really is true that actions speak louder than words. In fact, you might find that the truly sexist people, or any type of bigoted person for that matter, are actually the ones who don't say obviously bigoted things. But you have to always consider the context and the tone of when someone says something. So in summary, for that part at least, let a joke be a joke. Not everything is serious. Your delicate little minds can handle a bit of banter. Yes, what someone says may insult you because of personal reasons, but try to look at it from a more objective point of view, that we sometimes deal with tragedy by masking it with comedy. Now all of that part is up for debate, and I can certainly see why some people might disagree, but then there are other more specific issues which genuinely aren't even offensive at all, and it actually makes me angry that they even exist. A perfect example came up recently which I just have to use, even though it will date this video horribly. First, the backstory. In Melbourne, Australia, in March, around the time of International Women's Day, a lobby group pushed forward a movement to have a number of pedestrian crossing lights replaced. The reason? To replace the supposedly male silhouettes with female ones instead. The change is intended to, quote, reduce unconscious bias. Now when I first heard this story, I had a literal mental jam. All I could picture is that my brain was made up of two cogs turning and that they had just stuck. Or maybe a better analogy is that my mind was a door, and I had so many thoughts at once trying to get through at the same time that I couldn't focus on any one idea. Slowly the mist started to clear and I was able to properly arrange my opinion. Wow, this is dumb. First of all, how much is this costing us? I found out it cost 8,400 Australian dollars to change the lights, money that could be spent on reducing domestic violence, or providing counselling, or subsidising female workers, or literally anything else which helps women. Secondly, who decided the crossing silhouette was a man? Just looks like a stick figure of a person in general to me. Maybe the lobby is actually sexist for thinking it's a man. Okay, now see, that part was a joke, so you don't have to get offended. Please see 2 minutes ago when I just explained this. Thirdly, Who says replacing the signs with women will change public perception? Are there any studies to back this decision up? But even if this is true, there's still more issues. Fourthly, and I don't think I've ever said the word fourthly before, but in any case, how are they going to make the silhouette look female? This is the thought I had before I saw what the lights actually looked like. Now, if they give the silhouette a bigger chest, then it could be considered offensive to women with smaller chest and also objectification of women. Now, if they give the silhouette a skirt, which is what they ended up doing, then who's to say that all women wear skirts? Isn't that an unfair assumption? Here's a picture of the lights, by the way. Yeah, stupid, right? And of course the obvious comeback to this is, you're a guy, you don't get it. But that's not what this is. I have female friends who also agree it's a waste of money for the exact reasons I just outlined. Like I said at the start, it's a logical response, not an emotional one. I guess what I'm trying to say with all of this is... I don't know. Just stop being so sensitive, okay? Try to be objective. It's okay to stand up for your beliefs, but do it in a calm, rational way. Don't jump down the throats of every single person who says something insulting. In fact, take the moral high ground. If someone says something bigoted or genuinely offensive, then just ignore them. Laugh at them. But don't get angry about it because that solves nothing. The best kind of victory in these kinds of situations is when you can just let it go. So if you have a situation where someone has been overly sensitive or, alternatively, been genuinely bigoted, then tell us about it by venting in the comments section below.
Follow CultureCrash on social media!